Hi all, Mary Languish here. I'm super excited to talk to you about my trip to the Denver Art Museum Monet exhibit 2019. As you know, my goal is to empower you to reach your artistic potential and inspire you to follow your artistic voice. So let's get started and talk about Monet. I'm going to talk about what I like most personally about Monet's work, thoughts and favorite pieces from the show itself, how the whole show affected me as an artist and my personal work, and then end with a challenge to you, as well as myself, for how we can take our art to the next level. Let me start by first telling you how much of a favorite Monet is to me. He really is the king of Impressionism, I think. And for years I said that he was my favorite artist. His brushwork is elegant and his color choices are they've got a pastel feel, but they're so realistic. His lighting and his colors capture your eye and engage you in. He's really good at using colors in light and shadow to create different times of day, different atmospheres. He's just really, really good at what he does. What I also admired about all of his work is that he works from his experience. He goes out into the field and he paints plein air outside. And so all of his stuff is so raw and so real. And it's because he's painted from nature. So with all of that in mind, that's an example of why I personally like him as an artist. He's just so good at expressing nature, capturing the impression of nature in his work, and I find that super, super inspiring. So specifically from the show itself, I had never seen any of Monet's stuff in person. So that alone was amazing. To be that close to a painting and see the work and see the brushstrokes was just so cool. I would definitely say, growing up, seeing his work in books and like studying his work and looking on the internet at his work, it's definitely even better in person. So if you ever get the chance to see it, you have to see it in person. It's just different in person. Way better. His textures, his colors, you feel like you're right there as if you could put the paint on the canvas. That's what it felt like. One of my favorite things was that I didn't realize, or I wasn't as familiar with the fact that he did a lot of scenery that had fog in the distance, and he's so good at representing fog with paint and creating an atmosphere with paint, whether that's a certain time of day, whether it's weather, whether it's physically atmosphere, the moisture in the air. He was able to get that appearance on a canvas, and that was just so inspiring to me. Two of my favorites were Morning on the Zen. One was more foggy, and the other one was when the fog had kind of lifted. And just the subtlety of color, and the longer you looked at it, the more vibrant it looked, actually. You got to see the greens popping through, the aqua colors pushing forward, and then the sort of violet background just almost turned more violet as you looked at it. It was just kind of magical. So those two, even though they kind of almost had an abstract feel in terms of they look kind of like an ink blot psychology test type of thing, as what they said in the exhibit, so true to what that scene probably actually looked like. My other favorites were a lot of his winter scenes. He is so good at capturing snow and capturing the colors that snow can have when certain lighting touches onto that snow. And so I loved all of his winter ones. That was honestly probably another one of my favorites, was just watching how he put color into white and the texture into the white and just drew your eye into those paintings. Was amazing. It felt cold in that room because it was like he was so good at representing those feelings, that atmosphere again. And I found myself throughout the exhibit, whenever I went to a new room, looking kind of, around the room quickly before I actually went to each painting individually. And I would notice ones that I'd recognized. I was like, oh, that one looks familiar. That one looks like I've seen that one before in a book or something, And even though I was excited to look at it up close, I honestly was more thrilled to look at the ones that I hadn't seen before. Because it was like, this is stuff that I've never seen of Monet's, you know, and this is my chance to look at it and to absorb all that he's done. And so I was really hungering for the work that wasn't as famous, even though the stuff that was well known is amazing in real life. From this exhibit, a lot of the work there was from private collections, and so it is stuff that you won't necessarily see again, and so it was really an amazing experience to just soak in every painting as much as possible. After going to an exhibit like that, how does it actually affect me as an artist? I truly have forgotten how much I loved Monet's stuff. I mean, like I said, I grew up and I always said he was my favorite artist. I loved his texture and his nature scenes and just the way he did Impressionism. I loved that. And so this was a reminder of how much I actually love his work. He's totally my favorite artist of all time. And all that I love about painting, Monet does so well. His work is a perfect example of what I love in painting. And so if I can incorporate that into my own work, like, I feel like I've got it. I definitely have, as most artists like yourself maybe have felt, you know, you go through seasons of not feeling super inspired and not having any specific ideas for projects or for paintings or whatever, or for style even. Maybe you feel like you don't even have a style, right? There's all these things that like we go through these ups and downs of inspiration and lack of inspiration. And I felt like this exhibit specifically for me was a boost of inspiration. Again, it revealed to me how much I love Monet, how much I love Impressionism and painting, and this specific style and nature and like those things that in my life I enjoy so much. One thing that I didn't think I would get from this exhibit, well, first off, there's a lot of artists out there that are really good at storytelling in their work. I have a lot of students, I have a lot of friends that are artists that are so good at like either illustrating or somehow just incorporating imagery that tells a story in their work. And for me personally, I've always been like, I feel like I'm missing that. I don't have that piece. You know, I love painting, I love Impressionism, but like, how do I incorporate story into that if I'm just painting a landscape, you know? And Monet's work, seeing it in person and all of these pieces together, revealed to me that he tells stories through his work. He does series, like the series of the cliffs here. It's like a series of 3 paintings, maybe more, but the 3 were there at this exhibit. And they're all of the same cliffside, beach, grass, but from different angles. You know, one's up close, you're on the beach. The next one, you've walked up the beach a little bit and you can see the cliff, the peninsula from a little farther away, and then you continue and you're on top of the cliff looking kind of over the cliff, but you still see back to the beach and back to the cliffside. And it just revealed to me like how much you can incorporate so much story, so much emotion into paintings of nature. And he was so good at doing it in such an interesting yet simple way of like just doing the same place from a slightly different angle, slightly different times a day, over and over and over again, until he could kind of have this series that did tell a story, that drew you into the scene. And so I really pulled away from that, knowing that like through landscape, through painting, I can do the same thing. Again, how it affected me was I do impressionistic work, and that is probably one of my favorite things to do. I use a lot of palette knife, use a lot of oil paint to do nature scenes, and I haven't really done that in a while. And so really this exhibit for me personally has rejuvenated that love for those things. So things like thick paint and dramatic lighting, colors, textures, nature and landscapes. Again, I felt like it was getting boring, you know, it's all the same. But this totally took that out of my mind, and now I'm like, I have to do something impressionistic landscape right now. I'm just completely inspired to paint in Impressionism again and to really dive into the things I learned at this exhibit, and super excited about where it's going to take me after seeing his work in person. One question I had for myself as I was leaving the exhibit was, why does an artist paint? Like, I mean, not everyone paints, but you know what I mean. Why did Monet paint? Why do all these famous artists paint? Why do I paint? Is it for, money? Is it for selling pieces? Is it for patrons, people that have bought pieces before that they like a specific thing? Is it for fame? Someday wanting to be famous, have your work all over the world, displayed everywhere? Is it for yourself only? It made me ponder, like, why do we paint? And it really came down to the fact that you have to have a love of painting. Like, you physically have to just love the act of putting paint on canvas. And like, that should be fun and that should be enjoyable. And I really believe that Monet loved his process. In order for him to create such beautiful impressionistic landscapes, he had to love putting on that colorful, creamy substance onto this canvas and blending the colors together with brush strokes and just like falling in love with that process. It has to be how he did so many pieces. And so many people at the time when Monet was doing a lot of his work, like, didn't approve of what he was doing because, it was so out there. It was messy looking compared to what people were doing before him. And so he was having to paint no matter what people thought, right? He had to paint what he wanted to paint in the style that he wanted to paint it. It made me think about, how many of these pieces do you think he fell in love with to the point of like, he didn't want to give them away? Like, that's what I was thinking about. I'm like, man, if I painted that, I wouldn't want to sell that. I wouldn't want to give that to anybody. I'd want to keep that and put that in my house. And so I was thinking those things as I was looking at all this work, but he made so much work. Like, even what was at the exhibit is, only a portion of what he did. And so must have fell in love with a ton of his pieces, but yet he moved on to the next one. He kept going. He kept creating work. He didn't let that stop him. So I think that's an inspiration to me as well. So my biggest thing, my biggest takeaway from this exhibit is that I think I've renewed my joy of painting. And every time I sit down to paint, I need to be reminded of the process should be fun. And the process is fun. It really is. And I need to be reminded of that. We get caught up, especially if it's your business, get caught up in art being how you make money or how you connect with people or how you please people. And I want to paint for painting. So my challenge to you is a few things. First, one, the question, why do you create? What are the reasons behind creating? Who do you do it for? Those are the things to ask yourself, right? And then my challenge to you is to go out, create whatever your medium is, go create something without expectations. Don't think about your customers, don't think about your family, don't think about your friends. Think about what you want to paint in the moment and put it out on canvas, put it out on paper, put it out, whatever your medium is, do that and see what happens. Because I believe that if we can really express ourselves and paint what we really want to paint without the restriction of other things, we can create some amazing work that I think will impact the world in a really powerful way. So if you're ever in the Denver area, from now till February 2020, I highly recommend that you go see the Denver Art Museum Monet exhibit. You will be in awe of what you see, and you'll be challenged to look differently at the world. And all my artists out there, it will definitely inspire you in your own craft. It will, by the end, have put you in a corner and would have forced you to ask yourself, okay, I have to do something now. What do I do? I have to go make something right now. That's going to force you, in a good way, to go out and create something. Don't let the inspiration you get from this exhibit go to waste. It's too amazing to let it go. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe for more content like this, as well as other art instruction. Thanks for watching. Bye.